everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Fiddle. I am an artist, a crafter, and a miniaturist that likes to teach others that they can be creative too. Link to Scavenger Hunt, patterns, and materials is listed in the description box below. And please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment. It really helps me out a lot with YouTube's algorithm. Okay, are you ready? Let's go. Today is part 2 of our revisit to the cold porcelain clay doll, knees, toes, and elbows. We are going to start with the legs first, and we're going to go back and forth step by step from one piece to the next. To begin, you're going to need your chopsticks and of course break them in half. Next, stack them on top of each other and tape them together. When you go to drill your hole, they're in exactly the same place on both pieces. And then we're going to drill a hole towards the top end of the chopsticks, the thicker part. This is where we're going to be putting our buttons and elastic through to attach the legs. Measure your chopsticks to your pattern piece so that way you get them the right size. For this project, the doll is actually just a smidge bigger. I think she might be 7.5, maybe even 8 inches tall. But for the pattern, it should be pretty accurate once you get it sized right. I ran out of ink in my printer, so I cannot print it to test fit to make sure it's the right size, and I do apologize about that. My hips were a little bit too long above the holes, so I nipped that piece off and then I used them as a framework for the foot. Now, in my other dolls, I did not do this, but I thought it would be a good idea here because my first doll, I actually broke her leg when I went to pull her boots off for the first time. So I figured if I give more stability to the bottom of the foot, the leg is less likely to turn. I also did a bit of sanding at the hips so that way the joint was more rounded. Now the framework for our legs is done, we're going to move on for the framework for the arms. For this, you're going to need 2 bobby pins along with a set of pliers and nippers. First, we're going to want to straighten out the bobby pin, and we're mostly going to use the flat end, not the wavy end. And you're going to want to make this as long as your arm, but before you measure and cut, make sure that you put an eye hook at the shoulder joint. While you're doing this, keep in mind of which direction you want your arm to be hanging. If you want her hand a certain way, you may have to twist the wire in that direction. If you want to make a bent arm, lay your pattern down on your paper and make sure to mark out where the elbow bend is so that way you know where to bend the wire. Once you have the bend in the elbow, you can go ahead and measure from the elbow down to the hand and nip what you need to there. Set them aside and we're going to come back to the legs. We are going to start by just attaching some clay over the wood on the foot portion. This is because we have to do the legs in stages, otherwise we would be putting fingerprints and dents and marks in the legs as we made them. So that's why we're going about in stages. Because this doll isn't accurate to size, I had to make my own foot pattern and then go from there. Use just a finger dab of water when you initially lay down your clay. This will help it stick more to the wood. And as you can see, I did leave quite a bit of heel jutting out towards the back, and that is because we do have to still add on the upper portions of the leg, and that will take up some space on the back of the stick. Once you have them proportionate and looking the way you want, let's go ahead and turn our attention back to the arms and give the feet some time to dry. Adding the clay to the arm is a bit different than adding it to the leg. We can't use water to help it stick, so you have to be mindful of how hard you're pushing on the clay, and that also makes it a hard time trying to blend your seam. Do what you can while it's soft, and then after it dries, you can go back through and form it out like we did for the details on the chest. Once you have a bit of clay up there towards the shoulder, take your skinny dowel and poke it through where we put the eye hook. Leave in the whole time for drying so that way we know our hole stays open. You may have to poke it through a few times to get all the clay that's going to pull through set back in place. Now that the hole's set, we can go ahead and take our arm and put it up against the doll so we get an indent of where the hole is on the doll's body. This will make sure everything coordinates. Work your way down to the elbow and then set it aside so it can dry and start working on the legs again. You'll first want to measure out 2 equal portions of clay. Tuck the first one away. I keep mine under a glass cup so that way no air gets to it. The second one you want to turn into a teardrop shape. Most of the leg muscle for the calf is on the back of the leg, so the front, but you do want to put some sort of covering of clay over it because it is transparent, and the wood showing in this area would throw the textures off for the leg. When you go to attach your teardrop of clay, start with the point of the teardrop at the back of the ankle. You want the mass of the clay closer towards the knee. Then, starting at the heel, blend your clay all the way around. Here are mine so far. They're actually starting to look like little leggies. Set them aside to dry, and we're going to turn our attention back to the arms. Just like we have been starting, we're going to take 2 pieces of the same amount of clay, set one aside for later, and turn the other into a teardrop shape. Add the larger portion of the teardrop at the elbow and get smaller towards the wrist and blend the clay out. Once they look the way you want them to, go ahead and set them aside, and we're going to start working on the upper portion of the leg. For these, we are going to split our clay down the middle before we attach it. This will make sure that the clay goes evenly all the way around, opposed to how we did before. Start at the hip joint and make sure that when you're covering the end with clay, that you keep it thin on the inner portion towards the body. Next, take your skinny dowel and poke your hole through. Once you have it set, hold it against your doll so you get the impression of the hole from the hip. Okay, now we are going to move on to the hands, which is the last portion of this tutorial. For them, I decided to go with like a mitten style where there's only a thumb. As always, start with 2 equal portions of clay. I just turned them into balls and flattened them out. And to make the thumb, I took a pair of scissors and cut it out. It was a little tricky to get the hand curved the same way as my wire was, even after turning it the way I wanted the hand to go at the very beginning. I did come back through later on after it was dry and added more clay to the hand just so you couldn't see the wire through the back of it. I also tried to get the hand and thumb set in a way where I could actually put something in the hand if I wanted to. Unfortunately, I do not have an after shot of the hands, but I do have a shot of a scary face. Next tutorial will be all about the head. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.